that Roy, or yeah, that Roy guy is really annoying.
Yeah.
I'm going to take this downtime as an opportunity to remind everyone to do their duty and to vote for Darwin's deity. Link will be in the info and in the live chat.
Where do the votes stand at the moment?
I think he has like 200 of them. He's up. He's up on True Empiricism on like 60 votes. Like I said, it's a Christmas miracle, CK.
All right, Philip's going to be about 15, 20 minutes. And I have no idea what Jack is doing. He's probably still arguing with Dan.
Yeah.
Now, what was Jack trying to achieve there?
I'm not sure. I just came into it, and I was trying to get into the room and trying to figure out if I could still get into it, even though they were saving a spot for someone. So I wasn't really paying attention. It sounds to me like they think that they seem to think that Jack is being dishonest or asking too naive of a question when he asks them, how do you justify your interpretation? It seems like people think that he needs to come out and just say, look, I don't think you can justify your interpretation, because when you do, it's often going to be circular.
Can you add Jack to the Hangout?
Yes, or I'll try to. And I think that what sucks is Jack's number one enemy always comes in and annoys everything. His terrible connection and audio. Wait, am I in this? I'm not. Oh yeah.
Well, it says it's not letting Jack join for some reason.
Oh, I have him blocked.
I assume that's a joke.
Yeah. Hold on one second, because I don't think I have Jack on this account.
Is your one still live, the one that you made?
It's probably down by now.
Can you add Jack to the call, to the group? Because I can't do that because I'm on.
Yeah, I'm trying to now, but my internet's really slow. That's why you got to make yours first.
Okay.
Sorry. All right, I'm doing it now. All right, I added his black belt name to it. Hey, Alex, how's it going?
5x5 here. How's tricks with you, Joe?
All right. I feel like, Alex, you always get kind of, whenever you always want to come into a conversation, it feels like there are 50 other people who are cutting in and interrupting other people. And so when you finally come in to say something, everyone takes out their rage on you.
That's fine. I can take it. Like,
But it's not just it's just me too. I've done it. I've listened to past audio and I'm like, Alex didn't do anything. Why am I yelling at him?
All right, Jack's
Yeah.
there.
So Jack, you got schooled by Dan.
I think I might.
Can you hear me, Jack?
Jack,
Yeah.
if you're talking, we can't hear you.
All right. So I think that the correct analysis of the interpretation issue actually entails that theists can't interpret God incorrectly.
Yeah.
Can you mute your mic?
I mean, that's a bit harder to make other. I mean, how would you make someone understand that that is a huge problem then?
Hold on. Can you hear me, Jack?
Mm-hmm.
well, I think at that point you would like pose like a quite a ridiculous question. Like, so, are you then claiming to be infallible when it comes to reading the Bible?
Okay, I don't know what you're talking about, Alex.
Well,
But Jack, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
So I think that the correct analysis of the interpretation problem shows that theists can't actually interpret God incorrectly for the reasons that we discussed before.
You're assuming an omnipotent God.
Is that necessary?
Well, why else would it be the case that one couldn't interpret him incorrectly if he weren't omnipotent?
Yeah, that assumes an
Yeah,
omnipotent
I'm
God.
assuming that God is infallible.
Yeah.
Right. But there could be a fallible God, right?
Yeah,
wouldn't
but
the
that's not. Can you guys mute
So-
your mics?
Sorry?
But the Christian position is that God is infallible.
Well, I mean, the point is that would just mean that people who had two different interpretations were both right.
Correct. Well, no, it means
I don't think a Christian
it
has
means,
that view.
It means that the interpretation, they both have the correct interpretation. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean that their beliefs are correct.
No, but their interpretations are both correct. So somebody says
Exactly.
Jesus died on the cross, and somebody says Jesus lived on the cross. Then, even though the interpretations conflict, they are both correct.
Exactly. So I don't think that the interpretation argument, the way that you run it, actually works. It's
accept
coherent
that.
for the.
No
Sorry?
Christian is going to accept that. And accept
I'm not saying
that
that-
somebody
I'm not
who
saying that-
interprets the Bible as a cookbook is interpreting it correctly.
Yeah, I'm not saying that there aren't going to be other problems as a consequence of this analysis. I'm just saying that it's not incoherent for the Christian to say that they're correctly interpreting God.
Yep. I didn't say it was incoherent.
isn't it tautological though?
The question is whether it's justified.
I don't see how this isn't going to.
But I think it is justified.
How is it justified?
Well, because the contrary just yields a contradiction.
No.
It's contradictory for them to have the view that God is infallible and that they misinterpret him, or that it's possible to misinterpret him.
Yeah.
You cut it out for other people?
But that's
Yeah, you're cutting out, Jack.
Okay, I kind of see the argument as having two angles. One of them makes it even more of a mess, and that's the angle you're going for, right? The fact that, look, anything is correct because it's an omnipotent being. Anything that's consistent with an omnipotent being would be a consistent interpretation.
Well, I don't know about anything that's
That's
consistent, but the
probably
point is
their
that
objection.
any
Sure,
belief
God,
that they
yeah.
any belief they end up holding as a
Yeah.
result of a divine communication, which I think is actually going to amount to be any belief that they end up holding full stop,
Yeah.
is what God is intending, is the correct interpretation of God.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna open up a huge number of other problems for them.
Yeah. Yeah. You said it better. Yeah, I agree.
But I think that that's actually the correct entailment of their view, not the one that Jack is advancing.
Yeah, that's the
Well,
second
but they're
part
starting
of it.
from the assumption that there are right or wrong interpretations.
Yeah, and I'm saying what I'm saying is I've shown that that's incorrect. There aren't incorrect interpretations. In fact, it's logically impossible for there to be such a thing as an incorrect interpretation for an infallible being.
Well, it just seems like that argument is too powerful.
What do you mean?
Well, it's kind of like it's not really interesting to press the more powerful objection, right? Because it just makes the interpretation argument odious.
Well, I don't know about how interesting it is, but I think that that's the correct view, assuming we grant that God is infallible.
I mean, it doesn't really resolve the problem as to whether they are getting access to what God really wants or desires.
No, that's obviously true. God could be intending to mislead them. In fact, it's actually, I think if anything, this shows that it's necessary that God must be intending to deceive people, because as long as two people have two contradictory beliefs, at least there are two, then he's at least intending to deceive one person.
Yeah, so what they're going to do is say that they're going to try to deny that God's infallibility conflicts with the impossibility.
There being misinterpretations, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but what's it going to mean to say that he, as long as they agree with our analysis of interpretation, which is trying to understand the intentions of the author or communicator, what's it going to mean to say that an infallible God is going to be incapable of communicating? Because I don't think they're going to want to say that either.
But the question that I'm trying to pose is, how could they have a justified belief, right, that God means X rather than Y?
Well, it's justified in virtue of them believing it.
That doesn't follow.
It does follow.
The question is, why would they believe that God is infallible to begin with, independently of Scripture?
No, that I agree that they have no justification for that.
Okay, so what I'm saying is you have to grant first that they have an independent belief that God is infallible, right? That isn't derived from revelation.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the problem. But yeah, if we start from the assumption that God is infallible, right, then they have a choice to either say that everybody interprets God correctly because an infallible being is getting them to believe whatever he wants them to believe.
Yeah.
Or they can try to resist the idea that misinterpretation is inconsistent with an infallible God.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe there's a third angle that has to do with the question of whether it really counts as interpretation at all. If if there's
Well, that's the one that I wanted to discuss with you, because I don't really understand what it would mean for it to not be interpretation.
yeah, so the idea is
Because if God is infallible, a causal relation is the same as an interpretation.
it involves the question of what meaning is, right? And so the argument is that meaning, linguistic meaning. And so the argument is that what linguistic meanings are three different nested intentions, right? So the idea is that the first intention is that the speaker wants you to believe something, right? Speaker wants you to believe X. So there's a proposition he wants you to believe, right?
Right. Yeah.
Second thing is he wants you to recognize, I'm trying to remember how this goes exactly. This is Grice's analysis. Maybe I can just call up.
Philip's here.
Philip, do you have the link to that Grice thing that I had you call up the last time?
Yeah, well,
Different.
it was just on SCP, I think.
Yeah, can you find it again? And read the three different intentions.
But Jack, I think that this poses much bigger problems for the theist, because I think that they will be forced into a dilemma of saying that either God is unable to communicate effectively, which they're not going to want to say, or that God wants to deceive people because there are people that have contradictory beliefs based on God's communication or supposed communication.
That's a good point. Yeah, we should maybe add. Let me make a note.
Now,
Well,
EF's not going to have an answer to that question.
with regards to that latter part, I think they might try to segue down like notions of free will. So the people who have different messages are in some way denying this intentional.
That's not going to go anywhere, though.
Why not? Like, how is this not them justifying it to themselves?
Well, we're just going to ask them what libertarian free will is, and that's going to be the end of the discussion.
Okay, let me see.
Five minutes?
Philip,
Thank you
Jack
very
pointed
much.
out that we need independent justification for accepting that God is infallible.
Oh, they need independent justification for what?
Accepting that God is infallible.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, that's true. Without appealing to the Bible, like the Bible or anything, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, we're granting that for the sake of the argument. I mean, they'd need independent justification that God exists, right?
Sure. So
See, I think that the objections that result from this are actually more interesting. Another point is that people like EF won't really be able to argue that other Christians are misinterpreting the Bible.
That's true, yeah.
So, he said, do you want me to just read them out, what they are?
Yeah, just read the three intentions, yeah.
So, in the example of the driver flashing her lights, they're intending that you believe that your lights are not on, that you recognize her intentions, and that this recognition be part of your reason for believing that your lights are not on.
What's the second one? Recognize the intention.
That you recognize your intention. Yeah. That you recognize one, that you believe that your lights are not on.
No, I thought it was that you recognize
Well, that's what it says here.
that is the intention of the author to have you believe that. Isn't that the idea?
Yeah, it's saying that you believe. The first part is saying that you believe that your lights are not on, and the second one is saying that you recognize her intention.
Her intention, which is to get you to believe that
Yes.
And the third one is
That this recognition be part of your reason for believing that your lights are not on.
So the idea is, can there be two contradictory intentions? Can I intend that it mean X for agent A and mean Y for agent B?
Yeah, see, I think the answer to that is yes. So, for example, if I say to Josh and to Helena, the cat has arrived in the room, and I know that Josh will interpret that to mean that Mina has joined the hangout, and Helena will interpret that to mean that the cat has come into her room. I don't think that there's any contradiction there. And people actually do this in real life. You know what's funny is that Yaniv does this a lot. When me and Vogel are both speaking to him, he'll say no. Ask him a question at the same time that require the same answer. I mean, but yeah, I don't think it entails a contradiction.
But I think what we want to do is distinguish a causal disposition, right, from a meaning intention.
A causal disposition from a meaning intention.
Yeah, so like if I said, I like big asses, right? And
Yeah.
in virtue of my omnipotence, let's say I'm God and I say I like big asses, right? I know that by saying that, I'm going to cause you to believe that that's what I like, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that necessarily meaning?
See, I don't think that there's a distinction in the case of an infallible agent. See,
No, but the point is,
go on.
I might be able to cause you to have a belief by saying something. Does that necessarily mean that it's?
I agree.
Does that necessarily mean that what I believe I've interpreted?
Yeah, so I could say to you, I like big asses, or I could put electrodes in your brain that result in you having the belief that I have big asses, right? In one case, you've interpreted me, and in another, you haven't.
No, but the point is
Oh,
that there could be cases where a linguistic utterance is acting like a mere causal power.
well, I think that would always be the case in the case of a divine agent.
But in that case, it doesn't seem like you're engaging in interpretation at all.
Wait, so CK, you're saying that like in the case of God, like if he foreordains everything, right? He wants people to, like, he intends for people to believe this, right? And so and even if they're they couldn't both obviously be true, right? They're still interpreting him correctly. So I don't understand what you're saying, Jack. You're saying that
What I'm saying is that God can cause you to believe anything that he wants, right? If he's omnipotent.
But we're not engaging in interpretation.
But does it mean that just because he uses an utterance to get you to believe that's necessarily a belief that's arrived at by interpretation? But let's say I like big asses, right? And let's say that expresses the proposition that I like big asses, and that proposition is true, right? But hold on, thank you very much. Okay, but let's say that I know that let's say I know that Philip is constructed in such a way that if I say that, it will cause him to have the belief that there's pea soup in the kitchen, right? Is he necessarily interpreting my utterance to mean that there's pea soup in the kitchen? And is it possible that what I meant to say was, what I meant to express was that I like big asses?
Yeah, I think Jack might have
and
a
if
point.
I asked him, yeah, see, that's what I think is the issue that I haven't really.
What do you think, Philip?
let me think for a second.
If you bring up that if you bring up that you were meant to say something else, would they not point back to God's omnipotence and say that God would always say,
well, God knows
essentially what he means?
God knows that I'm going to believe, not that I like that. God knows that Philip is not going to believe. Let's say it's not me. Let's say it's God. Okay. So God says I like big asses. He will acquire that there's pea soup in the kitchen, right? But isn't it possible for God to utter asses in order to express the true fact that God does like big asses, and therefore he's deliberately giving Philip a false belief, but it's not really clear whether interpreting God correctly. The meaning, I mean, it seems like you could argue that he's not interpreting the meaning of the utterance correctly, even though God knowingly, right, gave Philip that belief by uttering that proposition.
Wait, well, why wouldn't I be? Right? I mean, you're saying he knowingly, like he intends for me to believe that, right? Why would?
Well, see, that's another issue, right? Is it seems to me it's possible it could be a right?
It could be a what?
What Jack is saying is that the agent can intend for someone to have a belief as a result of a communication, but the receiver not engage in interpretation and still end up having the belief. I mean, that's what I understand Jack to be saying.
So I take it interpretation is going to be a kind of inference.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Jack might be onto a problem here.
This is why we really need Randy on to help us sort this one out. This one's a hard one. Because see, you made an interesting point, CK, which was that you could even say and cause somebody to believe that I like to believe that you that it was a meaning or deliverance of.
You're breaking up, Jack.
Sorry?
Still breaking up.
I'm breaking up?
Yeah.
Let me try. How's it now?
Keep talking.
That would be a good idea.
It's still breaking up.
Still try starting the app. How's it now?
Better.
Yeah, it's fine.
All right, what were you saying?
I think we need to figure out what actually counts active interpretation, right? Because it doesn't seem like causing to believe is sufficient to say that some interpretation.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether it's a different issue or the same issue as to whether one can express a proposition knowingly will be misinterpreted. Like, to express a proposition.
Can you want somebody to misinterpret?
Yeah.
Is that the, yeah.
Tend to be misinterpreted. Is it possible to intend and interpret?
I think intending to be misinterpreted is a logical contradiction.
But see anything intuitive to the idea that I can say I like big gases. Philip is going to take that to mean that soup in the kitchen. And
But how is that different from speaking in code?
Sorry?
How would that be any different than speaking in code?
Thing is, I may not actually want him believe that he's going to interpret it that way.
You're breaking up again.
Wait, when you say main, oh well, if he's breaking up,
Hold on. How is it now?
it's fine now.
Yeah, so I might not even want Philip to believe that there's pea soup in the kitchen. No. That if I say that that's what he's going to think is completely irrational. Isn't it possible to say to somebody
You're still
who's
breaking.
completely try rejoining?
How is rejoining going to change that his connection is shit?
No, but I don't have a bad connection.
I don't know. I don't know, but I think I have an example for CK, right? Because the code thing got me thinking. So, say you are speaking in code to a friend. Surely the idea is that you want others listening in to misinterpret what you're saying. So there would be two states, right? So,
Well, how are we distinguishing between that and you intending to communicate a different proposition to the other people that are listening?
Yeah, but here's another example. Let's say no matter what, I can't get my mother to understand me to be saying that I don't like it when she calls me on Sunday, right? I don't like it when you call me on Sundays. She interprets, right? And I know that when I serve, right? But hasn't she still misinterpreted me?
Philip, did you catch what Jack said?
Not really, no. I mean, well, no, I didn't.
All right, I'm going to try.
This is very irritating. Do you not find this irritating, Philip?
Oh, yeah, it's infuriating. But I'm thinking is because this seems like it's gonna be similar to, or it seems like the point Jack's trying to make is, is gonna be similar to the idea. I guess in the argument that you guys use against natural selection, right, where you want to say that there's a difference between intending for something to happen, right, and it just being, like coincidental with something else, right? Like, I don't remember the case in the photo case, but it's like how do you distinguish between it selecting for like the heart, pumping blood and making love sounds, right? I think Jack is trying to say that. I think Jack's trying to say something similar to. You could have it to where you could have it to where you intend to, or more, you can know that something's going to happen or that they're going to believe that, right? But nonetheless, it's just sort of coincidental that they also end up interpreting you that way. Is that the idea?
Well, my idea was, let's say, to understand that I don't want her to call me on Sunday. So that if I say I don't want you to call me on Sunday, she's going to misinterpret me. She's going to assume that I'm joking. So even though I know how she's going to respond, she's misinterpreting me. Doesn't that seem intuitively possible?
Doesn't that mean that that doesn't mean that you wanted her to believe that or something, right?
Right.
But then, I mean, wouldn't that just be sort of practically irrational?
Yeah, I wouldn't gain anything in terms of getting her to believe that by saying it. But like, for instance, what if I just said it to myself out loud? I don't want my mother to call me on Sundays.
Right. That's
right.
Yeah.
So like the meaning of the utterance is that I don't want her to call me on Sunday. But nonetheless, she's going to hear me, and I know she's going to hear me, and I know she's going to think that I'm joking. Right?
Now, what's that showing?
Well, the idea is that God could say, God could utter, thou shalt not kill, right? And he'll know that when Philip hears that, he's going to think there's pea soup in the kitchen. He's going to interpret that to mean there's pea soup in the kitchen, right? But I didn't want Philip to believe that. I uttered it for a different reason. It's just a necessary byproduct of my uttering it that Philip is going to come to believe that. And I happen to know that in advance.
See, now, in that case, it does seem practically irrational. Because...
Why? Let's say that there's a higher aim that's being served by saying thou shalt not kill, right? And it's just a necessary byproduct that it has this consequence.
I guess I need to...
But it's not logically necessary. And if it's not logically necessary, then it's not necessary.
No, it's logically necessary in order to... Did you ask me a question? How much do these cost? Oh, I don't know, but it's on that, because I pay a yearly rate. So, but if you do it by the day, I think they have the prices on that thing there.
How many of these are across the city? Are they everywhere?
They're everywhere below 110th Street right now.
Station.
Yeah.
You obviously put one somewhere else.
Yeah, you park them wherever there's a station. Okay. So no, the point is, let's say I have an aesthetic design in mind. The prettiest picture is one in which Alex believes that when I say they shall not kill, right? When they say, the prettiest picture for me is one in which Alex says, well, that when I say thou shalt not kill, Alex believes thou shalt not kill, right? One in which Philip has the constitution is constituted in such a way that when he hears that, he will believe that there's pea soup in the kitchen, right? But the causal determinants that are part of my design, right? That consequence is not one that I particularly care for. It's just one that necessarily follows from the other things in the design that I really do care about. So it's what I would call a byproduct. Do you see what I'm getting at?
Well, I understand what you're saying. It's just like the example. I forgot what you used, but it was like some sort of architecture or whatever, right? Where they have to,
spandrels.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So for Philip, believing this is just a spandrel. Now, isn't it possible to say that Philip is misinterpreting me?
Without it being practically irrational.
Yeah.
That's a bit tricky.
Yeah, like I can't build a dome on arches without having spandrels, right? I have a prior commitment to the natural laws of Earth holding, because I just think the natural laws of Earth are the most beautiful natural laws of all the possible natural laws I could select. The ones that hold on in this universe are the most beautiful ones. So I have a prior commitment to natural laws of that kind, right? Now, let's say I also want, in addition to those natural laws, I also want domes on arches, right? Well, domes on arches with those natural laws without getting spandrels. I don't happen to like spandrels. In fact, I actually rather dislike them. But given that I want domes on arches and I want these natural laws, it's not practically irrational to create spandrels, right?
I think it's time to call Rain down.
See, Yaniv is the only person who knows how to get in touch with him.
No. I'm not getting Yaniv involved, especially on an interpretation issue of all things.
No, I didn't say get Yaniv involved. I just said he's the person who could contact Randy on.
Oh, yeah, I think we can trust Yaniv with that, and nothing more. Yeah, this is a much more complex issue than I first expected.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't have a settled opinion on this.
Wait, so in this case, when like CK, wouldn't they just be saying, like in the case of, I guess, a picture, or maybe the spandrel is better, right? I guess they're saying that the spandrels are permissible so long as it creates whatever
arches
yeah,
supported by domes.
Right.
I mean, domes supported by arches.
Yeah, so that's why in this case it's not practically irrational.
Jack, did you see what I posted on the council?
No. Can you not say?
Well, it's a conversation, so
Okay.
I think you would enjoy it.
It's, by the way, Alex, it's not at your expense. It's at the expense of a possible viewer.
Well, Yaniv isn't watching.
It could get out.
I posted in the council. Yaniv's in there.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So anyway, that it's actually, this is larger than the interpretation argument, right, Philip? Because it relates to the problem of evil.
Yeah, it goes back to that too.
Yeah.
Because we were talking the other, well, not the other day. It was like maybe like 2 weeks ago now.
Yeah.
Because it seems like they would be saying it's permissible in this case, right?
Right.
In which case, what would it mean? It'd be sort of weird to say that it's evil in this case.
Exactly. This relates to what Howell was saying, right? About how they actually God actually wants evil.
Yeah, either God actually wants evil or he's okay with evil.
Yeah.
It's fine that it's there.
Well, he might say it's a necessary evil, right?
Right, but in that case, it seems like there's sort of they're using evil in a different way.
Well, no. I mean, the point is, this is a bad thing.
No. When I say they're using evil in a different way, what I mean is that they're not using evil in the way that it's something that you ought not do, like in a categorical sense, right? It's okay to do.
Oh, right.
So long
It's
as
an instrumental. Yeah, it's instrumental rather than. It's intrinsically bad, but it's instrumentally good, or it's maybe it's instrumentally necessary, something like that.
Yeah, it's categorically bad by itself, right? But for this
it could be
purpose,
justified for the sake of some other good. Yeah, some higher good. So what did you think about the discussion with that Christian?
Well, I didn't understand what you were trying to do.
I was just trying to show that he couldn't justify any of it.
Yeah, but he was never going to understand the argument. That was very clear.
What are you guys talking about?
Well, I was trying to... I wanted to sort of unsettle him.
Oh, wait, what? Who are you talking about?
Oh, what was the guy's name? Dan? There was some Calvinist who came into Tom's hangout.
My word, less to talk to.
But he just couldn't see the circularity. I mean...
Well, but he started to concede that he needed to think about it, which I thought that was good.
Yeah. You know George Lukács, Jack?
Yeah.
Do you have an opinion of him?
Well, to the degree that I'm familiar with his views, he seems to be a major contributor to Marxist scholarship.
Yeah, his name pops up a lot.
It does? Where?
Just in a lot of reviews and stuff, I've seen his name come up a lot, and always favorably.
Well, I mean, he's primarily a theorist of literature.
Yeah. He wrote a book on Lenin, a study on the unity of his thought.
That's right. Yeah.
So, I assume that the theist would claim that God would know all possible causal actions coming from his propositions. What if they were to
Typically, yeah.
What if they were to deny that God would ever do that? So God only ever utters propositions, or only ever communicates when his intentions can't be misinterpreted without any
But
causal.
the thing is, right? The thing is that people disagree on the meaning of a verse in the Bible, right?
Sure.
So the question is,
Well, the question from the theist, I assume, would be something like whether or not God has communicated to the person with the different interpretation.
I mean, it just seems like they either have to say God intends for people to misinterpret him, or he intends for people to, for some people to learn the truth, and for some people to learn falsehoods.
Well, I'm saying that they would. So the idea is that you would deny that the people with different interpretations had any communication with God. So God never fails to communicate. And the idea.
No, but what if it's the Bible? They're not going to deny that the Bible is the word of God. What if two people read the Bible and come away with two different interpretations?
I don't know. I think it would very much depend on the person. I think someone like you take someone as insane as G-Man. G-Man would straight up deny that you had any communication, and you weren't speaking with God, and you were talking with the devil or something ridiculous like that.
But it's not a conversation. The text is the communication of God.
Yeah, I mean, they can't deny that Scripture. They're going to say he might say the devil tempts you into misinterpreting it, right? That's probably what he would say, right?
Yeah, I think he would something ridiculous like that. But then,
But the point that Jack is making is that they're now in a dilemma where they either have to say that God intends to be misinterpreted, which it seems like we do have a coherent analysis of, or that he intends for people to believe things that are false, or that he's incapable of communicating effectively. But I mean, that's not really an option. So the theist is in a bad place.
yeah, I've run dry. I can't think of where they could go from there.
But you see why I think the argument is too powerful, right, CK?
But there are still lots of funny questions we can ask.
Oh, yeah. I'm just saying that we lose the other interpretation argument, which is a very interesting argument to run.
Yeah. Well, we can run both.
Yeah, we can run both.
I think my one is actually easier to follow, though.
That's possible, yeah. What do you think, Philip?
I'm sorry.
What do you think?
Well, I agree that well, CK's is easier to follow, I think, but I mean, are you just asking about like? I'm not. What exactly do you want to know? What I think, what my thoughts are about?
Well, Jack is asking if you agree that it's a shame that we're losing
Oh well, yeah,
too powerful, basically.
yes.
Yeah, because you could preempt the interpretation argument by saying, how could God, being an omniscient being, an infallible being, even have thoughts, right? And
Oh
then
yeah,
you'd
of course.
lose the interpretation. So some arguments are sort of too powerful,
Yeah.
you know.
Or you
because
could say,
if you
how can you know that you're interpreting God correctly if God doesn't exist?
yeah, exactly.
Right.
And that would be just
But
a
how could God
different
be the? Yeah. Right.
yeah. So that would just be a different discussion.
But how could God create the universe if He has contradictory properties?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's even harder for a God that doesn't exist, though. Like, I guess we're saying the same thing there. But I think it's a funny problem to pose. I mean, how do Christians explain theists misinterpreting God's communication?
Well, I think it's
know?
going to be I think it's going to be similar to I think they're going to talk about sin and stuff like that. Right? They're going to say that man's cognitive faculties are corrupted by sin.
What did EF say? He said,
Yeah, but then the question is still going to be, why is God unable to communicate with imperfect beings?
No, they're saying that he can communicate with those that he grants grace to or whatever.
Oh, so he's
no,
incapable of
CK.
communicating to the rest.
Well, I think given certain constraints about freedom, right? They want to say.
No, but isn't this sort of like the Duns Scotus thing, right? Where like if
Yes.
Right.
if the receiver, right, is corrupted in some way, right, it's not actually logically possible for God to communicate with them, perfectly.
Yeah, he'd have to basically fix their cognitive faculties or something.
Well, yeah, the question
Which is, I imagine,
sort of
what
boils down
grace
to
is, right?
the
Grace
question
is,
seems to boil down to something like, can a perfect system interact with an imperfect system?
well, he can interact, but can he get? But that doesn't mean that he'll get the outcomes that he won't. Doesn't mean he'll get a desirable outcome. I think is the idea.
Then I don't see how that wouldn't like diminish it from being the perfect system. The perfect system can't get like the desirable outcomes.
Well, okay, so you mean by perfect, you mean in terms of engines necessarily be realized, right?
Right, which is, I assume, what we're giving these attributes, like with the notions of omnipotence and such, omniscience.
Yeah.
So can
if God is infallible, it's hard to understand how man can misinterpret it. Like that's going to be a puzzle for every theist, right? Just prima facie. If God is infallible, how is it possible that he can be misinterpreted? Because it's very hard for them to say that he's not being misinterpreted. Am I still connected?
Yeah, you are.
Yes, I'm following you.
Okay. Sorry, no, it's just that I'm on my bike, so I can't see. Sometimes it just disconnects, and I hear. It'll just be silent. So if you guys go silent,
Right.
I don't know whether I've disconnected or.
Right. So the question then at hand is, can an infallible being communicate with a fallible being without like the error?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And how is it like not a fallible system in itself? And if it
Right.
can, then how is the other system fallible?
I mean, I guess it's similar to divine hiddenness, or some of these other standard arguments, right? Because the question is, if God really wants everybody to know Him and love Him, right? He could clearly communicate.
You cut out that time, Jack. You cut out
sorry.
that time.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
So I guess it's similar to divine hiddenness, right? If God really wants everyone to know Him and love Him, right? There seems to be a puzzle as to why that isn't the case, that everybody does know Him and love Him, right?
Yeah. That's actually an argument that I think would be worth going into.
Yeah.
I can't stand J.L. Schellenberg's writing, though.
Yeah, I've never gotten into the divine hiddenness argument, but I imagine it might be interesting
Yeah.
to run. I've just never tried to run it,
Oh, you were there, right, Jack? Were you listening the other day when I brought up that point about God's cognitive faculties and His omniscience?
To whom?
I think it was to you and Josh, but I don't know if you were there or if you were listening. It was the day before yesterday.
Oh, remind me what you said.
So, because I remember Josh was talking about presuppositionalism, right? And like how like EF tries to ask you to justify the reliability of your cognitive faculties.
Right.
Yeah. And so the point I made was that if omniscience is the view that God knows all true propositions and believes no false propositions, then knowledge is either going to be internalist or externalist, right? And on certain types of on certain types of externalism, right? They're never, or any type of externalism, they're never going to say, no one except maybe like somebody insane like Swinburne is going to say that God's omniscience depends on something outside of himself, right? So they're stuck with an internalist view.
Oh.
And that's going to require justification, right? But yeah, how could God know? Even if he had the true belief that his cognitive faculties were working properly, how could he know it, right?
Oh, you
Because
brought
he
up
couldn't
an
have a
interesting
justification.
point. So you're saying you're pointing out that they're equivocating on. They want human knowledge to be justified in an externalist way, but externalism is a problematic view with respect to God's knowledge. Is that the idea?
Well, it's sort of a dilemma, right?
Right.
On the one hand, if they're externalists, right, that's completely insane for them to say for God, right? Because, I mean, for one, it would challenge God's aseity. And even for somebody like Swinburne, right, like, as far as he's willing to go, it seems just peculiar for them to... I mean, there's other problems with the externalist thing, too, but it would seem just really peculiar for them to say that God's knowledge is dependent on anything else, right? Because that's what the externalists are saying.
Yeah.
Right, but on the internalist view, then they're just committed... then they have to say that God couldn't be omniscient, right? Because it's either true or false that God's cognitive faculties are working properly, right? But there's no way God could know that, right? Because if he tries to give a reason, right, he'll he'll inevitably end up begging the question, right? And so the idea is that he couldn't have a justification, right? But on the internalist view, knowledge is going to be at least some type of justified belief. So God couldn't be a being. So in other words, God couldn't be an omniscient being because he couldn't know all true propositions and believe no false propositions, because he couldn't know if his cognitive faculties are working properly, since he couldn't have a justification for it.
Right. So it's similar to the problem that was raised for Plantinga, right?
Yeah, I think so. I don't remember. See, I don't remember. Yeah, well, Reyes asked them that, like how.
Yeah.
I forgot.
It's so silly.
I forgot.
It's amazing how smart people.
Yeah.
Just so silly, you know. Have a design plan. God doesn't have a design plan, so therefore he has knowledge in some other sense.
Right.
You know, is basically what they're saying. You know.
Right.
Why call it knowledge then? Why not just call it schmolledge? You know, it's so silly. You just can't.
I like to call it smart.
These people, I mean, Plantinga is no dope, right? He's a smart guy.
Intelligent.
Yeah, and yet it's just amazing what these people will say. You know, like if you just become a theist, you'll just end up saying anything. You know.
Right. In other words, I think the idea is that the idea of an internalist, essentially omniscient being, is, you know, couldn't exist, right? And it's funny because on an externalist view, either the external factor that's giving them knowledge, or providing a condition for them to have knowledge, right? Either that's going to be an agent, either it's going to be agential or it's not, right? And if it's agential, then the same problem is going to arise for that. So you're just going to end up in an infinite regress, right? So that's not going to work. And if it's non-agential, right? If it's just like like a lot of evolutionary reliabilists, right, want to say that, you know, evolution isn't intentional, right? But it still gives them reliable cognitive faculties. What they're going to have to end up saying is that there's going to be God's cognitive faculties are reliant upon some natural laws, right, or something like that. In which case, they'd have to say that God isn't the creator of everything, right? They'd be committed to some weird stuff. Like, for one, it would have to be a necessary condition that the universe exists, or something, or some type of universe. Right, even if they wanted to say that God created our local universe, right, they still have to say that God is dependent on some other type of universe.
Yeah, seems that.
What about a multiverse? Not according to Jim Carroll.
See, it seems sort of interesting just to think about, like, what properties of God are going to lead them to contradiction.
Yeah, well, I actually was once arguing that every property of God was incoherent. I mean, there's probably an exception, but let's go through them, right? Omnipotence, omniscience,
moral perfection.
Moral perfection.
Why is moral perfection incoherent?
Well, it assumes like some type of categorical norms, moral reasons, or whatever.
Is that omnibenevolence?
Yeah.
Okay.
Disembodiment. Disembodied mind in any case. A disembodied mind.
Yeah.
Aseity.
Wait, why is aseity incoherent?
It doesn't seem like God. I mean, there'd have to be things like there'd have to be external constraints. Yeah.
Well,
on God.
What do you mean? Like,
Well, there'd have to be laws, presumably, that govern God's nature, right? For God's nature,
right,
not.
like,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, like the Euthyphro dilemma, right, or something.
Yeah,
like,
that kind of stuff.
Laws of logic. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. What else?
Is immutability incoherent?
Yeah, and I think when you start getting to the more exotic properties, you might only have incompatible. You might only have incompatibility issues.
Okay.
I think a lot of the main ones are just don't make any sense at all, right?
Yeah.
There we go. Thank you. Thank you. Hi, to stay. Could I get the potatoes and the tomatoes and the chicken?
Well, since all those are incoherent, it's going to follow that God's necessary existence is going to be incoherent.
Yeah, necessity. I should give you my list of divine properties. Thank you. Have a nice evening.
You should what?
I should give you my list of divine properties.
What do you mean? Like,
I made a list.
oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, because there's like 15 of them.
What the fuck? Why? There's like immutability and impassibility.
If you give me 2 minutes, I can read it off to you. I just have to pay for this. I can't even remember what all of them are. Explain what impassibility is, Simon. Hi, how are you?
If I remember correctly, it's sort of the idea that nothing can like affect God or in any way.
Oh, he's impassive.
Can I get a receipt?
Right, okay.
Have a nice evening.
Oh yeah, divine simplicity.
Simplicity. Oh, that's a crazy one. That's one of the craziest of all. Is that so? What's going on in Tom's? Just out of curiosity.
Let me check.
God, I missed fireworks in the last couple of days.
Say that again, Simon.
I missed a lot of fireworks in the last couple of days.
Well, Roy, Nevin, Dan, and Ian are 4 out of the 8 spots.
That's poison. But see, Dan, I mean, Dan is not bright, but it's a little bit more interesting to talk to him because you can sort of show, because you can corner him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well, Dan just seemed very polite.
Yeah, but he wasn't like, and that you see that guy Roy is just poison because it's just presuppositional as garbage. I have no interest in talking to people like that. Just play games.
You'll blow up at him eventually.
I did blow up at him, but I'm not.
Oh, there
I'm
we
just
go.
not interested in talking to him. I'd rather he was removed. But see, it's sort of fun to talk to that guy Dan, because he wants to be an apologist, right? And he thinks he has it all figured out, like all these Christians do,
Oh,
right?
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and he doesn't have
To me,
anything
it seemed
figured
like
out.
the opposite. Like he had nothing figured out, and it was just sort of, I'm a Christian.
Yeah, that's my point. I have nothing figured out. Yeah, but he's very confident. I'm a Calvinist. This is what I would say. This is how I interpret Scripture. This is the answer that I would give you. It's all very clear in the Bible.
I missed the part where he sounded confident.
Well,
Because
he
when I
wants to
came in,
sound
he sounded
confident.
anything but confident.
Let me show you this list. Omnipotence. Now, some of these might be doubles, so we'll have to figure that out. But the list I have at the moment is omnipotence, omniscience, omnipotence, immutability, impassibility, sovereignty, aseity, omnipresence,
Incorporability.
No, that's something else. That's, you said,
Incorporeal, is that what you're
yeah,
saying?
incorporeality, yeah. Is there something called incorruptibility? Because that,
No. I might have just been mispronouncing. So.
yeah. Unity, simplicity, eternity, which can be understood as either timelessness or everlastingness. Transcendence, ultimacy, impeccability, perfect rationality, omnificence, perfect efficacy, necessity, and omnipercipience.
No, I haven't heard of omnipresence.
That means
What's the
that
last
God
one?
can perceive everything. Omnipercipience.
Oh,
God
okay.
perceives everything.
Yeah, well, what does it mean to perceive everything? Well, go ahead, sorry.
So I was asking about impendability. Nothing.
Which one?
Did you say impendability?
No.
Oh,
Impeccability.
it's about. Huh?
Impeccability.
Oh, what does that mean?
Sounds like
I think it's probably something like incorruptibility.
Okay. Sounds great. What about wonder? You forgot wonderfulness.
Fabulousness, I think, is what you wanted to say.
God is absolutely fabulous.
Yeah, God is absolutely fabulous.
Jack,
Mhm.
going back to the problem, I was trying to think over in my head, like, if I a Christian, what would I say? What if they were to make a separation between God communicating and what they would deem, quote, the Word of God, right? So if they were to say that the original writers did communicate with God, and they wrote the Word as intended, and the theists were to say that the Word itself can be miscommunicated.
Well, isn't that similar to the idea that, like, if I say I like big asses and you interpret it as I like pea soup, or there's pea soup in the kitchen, that that's still the meaning of my utterance? I like the gas is still the meaning of my utterance. Or did I misunderstand you?
No, I'm trying to figure out how it wouldn't avoid that. No, that's,
Are you interested in philosophy, Alex?
yes. I'm not like I don't read as much as I should because I'm usually quite busy. But
Shouldn't read anything. Fuck reading philosophy.
Yeah, CK doesn't read philosophy, which is, I don't understand that.
Why, just get you to do it. And then I say, Philip, what's the argument? And then you tell me.
I don't know. It's fun to read it, though.
Is it?
Well, I mean, it is for me. I don't know.
So Matt is going in there?
Let me check. I don't know.
Is it quicker to read it than it is to have you or Jack, or Randy on it, or whoever, tell me what the argument is?
Well, first he's in there, Jack. But is it quicker to read? I mean, I guess it'll depend on how.
I mean, I assume I have a much more superficial understanding of the issues than you guys do because I don't read. But that's all that really seems to be necessary for the people I encounter. Right?
Well, I mean, it's just good, like, especially if you want to connect issues, like,
Yeah,
like when you read a lot of it.
Honestly, I don't even know why you guys think I'm a black belt. Whenever I'm in trouble, I just say, what's the argument for that?
But I mean, it's just like when you read about this stuff, it's easier to like connect the, like, you can just sort of see like, oh, well, this is sort of like this, right? So since these are similar, right? This.
Yeah, and you could never do that if somebody said the stuff out loud.
Well, I think what Philip is saying is that it's more thorough.
No, I know. I'm being. I forget the word. Yeah. No, I think it's good. I think it's good that you read it.
Thanks, CK.
Do you read philosophy too, Simon?
No, I was just responding for Philip.
Oh, you're welcome, Simon.
Saying it seemed like a strange thing to say. I think it's good that you're reading.
Well, what I meant is I'm not opposed to philosophy being read. I just don't do it myself. I sort of joke that I'm opposed to it, but I'm not.
Although I don't have as much time to read anything else.
The first experience I had of trying to read a philosophy book was Belief and Meaning. I gave up after the first page.
That's a hard book.
I'm with you, CK. I can't get through it.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems like a Randy on
It's funny
type of book.
It's funny that when you asked what prompted Jack to debate this guy, Tom said fresh meat, and then Reyes said fresh young boy meat.
I didn't realize he said that.
Reyes is hilarious.
But I joined to discuss this issue with you, and then I realized that you weren't in a mood to let it go, but I couldn't figure out why, because the guy didn't seem like he was arrogant, and he didn't seem like progress could be made. So I was just confused.
I just wanted to put pressure on him. I didn't want to humiliate him.
Yeah, well, I guess that's you detected a level of honesty before I joined.
He was nice enough that I didn't want to humiliate him, but I wanted to show that he couldn't justify anything.
Right. Klingshaw is saying that he was dishonest. He was making stuff up as he went along.
That's probably true.
Wait, did this guy just come along?
What?
This Roy character is new on the scene?
Yeah, Roy is just a complete fucking moron. He's not the guy that I went after.
Now, why does Tom allow... I mean, look at the state of his hangout. You know, Roy, Nevin, Ian.
Tom is interested in mayhem. He wants to see mayhem.
Just get Godless and Mina in there every day.
Yeah.
Jack's saying something cogent, and Nevin wants to interrupt with nonsense. He says, "Why are you interrupting?" To be like, "Well, you were talking for 10 minutes." Like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, 10 minutes of sense must be met with 30 seconds of gibberish.
Yeah.
I can't stand her. I want her crushed at every opportunity.
Yeah, I'm with you now. That's what she said. I was
You
really
weren't
outraged.
before?
Well, no, I just haven't been exposed to her, I guess, somehow. I mean, I've heard all the talk
she's
about her.
just
Now I know
awful.
what you guys.
But you pay $5 to let her sit on your face?
I don't know that I would now. You know.
Wow. That's, Simon's principled about face sitting. That's great. You know what that reminded me of? That reminded me of the Ariana Grande game with Thomas.
Yeah.
Whenever we would
It's an
ask
act
him
of
something, and Thomas would be like, no, I would draw the line there. That's definitely where I would draw the line. And then Jack would say, but what if it was Ariana Grande? And every single time he would sound like he was in serious pain. Oh. Now you've given me a decision. Joe is in there too. Joe would rather be in there than here with us.
Did Joe get the link? Because I had to ask
He
for
did.
the link. Oh, he did?
He did get the link. Yeah, I didn't want it freely distributed because I didn't want to just create a replica of Tom's Hangout.
Right, I figured. So yeah, I missed a lot of fireworks in the last couple of days. What's going on with Mina, Justin, Catfish, Godless, Josh? What the hell happened there?
Just another screaming match. The only difference this time is that Josh participated in the screaming match.
Screaming match between who?
It started off between Mina and Godless. Then Josh decided to come in and go against Mina, which made her cry and leave.
Oh, I see. Okay. Gonna have to tune into that because I think I started listening after that point.
It was very entertaining, though. I've never heard Mina speak to anyone like that before. And she's screamed at me about a lot of things. I enjoyed her telling Godless to shut the fuck up and calling her a stupid bitch. I thought that was really fun.
She doesn't mean it, though. We all know she loves Godless. That's the problem.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the love may be fading. You know who I've become a big fan of on G Plus actually is Brenda.
Why?
Brenda is so funny.
What does she do that's funny?
Well, there was some discussion going on the other day against someone. I think it was a creationist, or I don't know what it was. And people were, giving their criticisms, and then she suddenly chimed in and said, "He doesn't even know what a deductive argument is." She said it so dramatically, it was hilarious. And I think she's quite an effective debater, Philip.
What? Why? Why do you think that?
Well, I think people like EF struggle with Brenda.
What do you mean? They just get irritated, or?
No, I think she actually poses questions that they don't know how to answer.
Maybe. I don't know.
You're not a Brenda fan. I get it.
Well, this is a live hangout, so I try to.
What?
I try to stay neutral.
The fuck are we doing on the air? Whose channel?
All that means is that in a few seconds, I'm going to get some messages on Skype from Philip saying Brenda is a fucking idiot. Something along those lines.
I had no idea we were live. Whose channel are we on?
Mine.
Veloso Speak 101. That's such a funny picture, too.
It's the peace sign. You know the significance of the peace sign? Come on. Well, I'm going to stop broadcasting.